heads up? If not, we'll do the executive director's report to start it off if we have to. How we doing? Okay. Let's call to order the the Authority Board meeting for June 15th. In honor of one of the great Mayor's Conference of the summer, the Corn King, Bob Taylor, came through again. So would you honor us by leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Bob.
Bless the cherries.
Bless the cherries. Okay, now is the time for public comment. If anyone in the audience wants to address us on any matter that's not on the agenda tonight, please leave a card for Carrie Grover, our secretary. I'm looking at her to see if anybody's left us a card. Public comments open, last chance. Going once, going twice. Public comment is closed. We are on to the consent calendar, generally routine. Nobody wants to pull anything?
Why don't we do the minutes first?
I always skip the minutes. All right, let's do the minutes first.
Move approval.
Move them second.
That's going to
Motion from Tatson, second from Pierce. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition or abstentions? It's been a long day. Now we're on to the consent calendar. You got everything, Terrian? Okay.
Second.
Okay, motion Pierce, second Romick. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Seeing, I'm going to find out where we're at. We're moving too quick here. Okay, we're waiting for her to count everything up. Okay, we are at item 4A. This is a public hearing. We'll open the public hearing right now. We are now at the public hearing, item 4A14, related to fiscal year 2016-17 proposed budget for the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, Congestion Management, and Congestion Management Agency. We will get a staff presentation for the proposed budget from, who's doing it? You're up, Brian.
Thank you, Commissioner Hudson and Commissioners. I am Brian Kelleher, the Finance Manager. We start this process in April. In May, we present it to the APC. We send it to the Authority Board as an informational item in May. We come back in June with any changes that we have made in the interim, and then we present it as a public hearing tonight for the full adoption of the budget. The changes made in May was a reduction of $1.5 million of RM2 funding that we're going to take care of this fiscal year. With that, I'll get right into the summary of the budget. As we go through this, our main revenue is the sales tax revenues, and we can see that there's a little bit of change. We're going to use about a 3% inflator for the sales tax revenue, and our federal, state, and local revenues is our grant funds. And I'll go through all of these individual categories as we go throughout the presentation. As you can see, the majority of one of the larger items in there is a decrease in local revenues, which has to do with the completion of some projects, not the loss of any grant funding. Our bond proceeds, we're going to use about $45.5 million, use up the remaining 2015 bond proceeds that we do have. Other sources will be the use of programmed Measure J funds that have been collected in prior years for the completion of projects that are scheduled for next fiscal year. The projects, programs, planning sections see increases and decreases due to the timing of some of the programs that are there. Obviously, the project section with the completion of the large projects like Highway 4, the SR4, 160 connector ramps, and we also have the debt service at the bottom, which shows an increase of about $5 million related to additional interest income or interest expense related to the timing of the bond issuance in 2015. As we've seen before, this slide shows the sales tax revenues over the last 5 fiscal years, with our budget of 2016 showing an anticipated growth of 3.71%, and we're using a conservative effort for next fiscal year at about 3%. Just last week, I received the last bit of information from the State Board of Equalization to show the difference in the first 9 months of fiscal year 15 to the first 9 months of activity in fiscal year 16. So that would be July through March 31st. You can see that cumulative, we're up about 5.76% over the prior fiscal year, which is good. You can see the first line item, which is gas. As we know, the gas prices have decreased, and they seem to be increasing a little bit. But our major category, which is the retail stores, it makes up about 19% of our revenue. We show about a 3.26% increase. That's another one that's continuing. And new auto sales is continuing to show some great increases, along with everyone going out to restaurants as well. This slide shows the sales tax revenue in the light blue, and the purplish dark blue color is the federal, state, and local revenues that we received over the last few fiscal years. And you can see in 2014, our grant funds that we received exceeded our sales tax revenue. A lot of that was a result of the work on Highway 4 and the Caldecott Tunnel. And you can see the proposed revenues for 2017 is about $35.7 million, and we'll get into those in just a minute. The capital project revenues have decreased from the grant funding to $22.6 million. And as we look at these, we can talk about the individual projects that have seen the decreases. Again, I want to stress that there is no loss of revenue by the agency. It's just the completion and of certain phases of the projects that we're being reimbursed for. The RM2 funds decreased $16.7 million with the completion of phases for the SR4 East widening and utilizing the remaining balance earmarked on the I-80 San Pablo project. The beta funds decreased $11.9 million for the completion of the SR4 160 connector ramp and additional funds for the I-80 San Pablo project as well. STIP funds increased $4.1 million with the anticipation of the I-680 carpool lane completion. ECRFA funds decreased $3.1 million to reflect the completion of utility relocation and fully expends the original $8 million on the Balfour interchange. Other funds increased $6.2 million on the anticipation of receiving $5.9 million of TDV funds for the I-680 auxiliary lanes. This slide here goes through and it shows the Measure J capital projects. We have about $82.7 million budgeted, and the next few columns show the application of where the revenues are being used for those individual projects. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see that there's a remaining balance of about $58 million. So $58 million will be the revenue sources for that will be $45.5 million of the remaining bond proceeds that we have. And then we'll have some earmarked funds from the current year revenue and some other Measure J revenue that was programmed for these projects in prior fiscal years. This slide here goes through the breakdown of the dollar. For every dollar we receive, capital projects gets about 42.5%. The local street maintenance is about 20%. And then all the individual programs and TLC are listed in there as well. And through the application of using the revenues and the grant funds, it leaves us with program reserved of $35 million of Measure J funds. Once again, this is the use of current year revenues and prior year revenues that have been earmarked through the strategic plan for these specific projects. On the bottom, we have the Measure C projects. As we're closing out Measure C, we're going to get about $6.4 million. That's interest income in addition to the $5.9 million that's listed for the Tri-Valley District funds that are going to be coming in. So we'll be using about $7.6 million of the Measure C funds. This slide here goes through the capital projects and shows the differences year over year where our budget changes are. The Caldecott Tunnel is winding down. It still shows about $3.3 million, which is related to some contract management as well as some landscaping. The BART East rail extension is being decreased about $28.2 million, and that's for the maintenance facility as well as some of the track work. We also have the SR4 bypass elements are increasing $3.6 million. That has to do with the Balfour project and some of the other smaller, like Richmond Parkways, seeing an increase for the additional lighting project that they have going on. Seems like we've been talking about projects. Projects do make up about 70% of the budget when you add in the debt service in addition to the project expenditures. Administration is $2.1 million. We're seeing a decrease of about $100,000. One of the things we like to do is always point out that we are below the 1% threshold set aside through the strategic plan. We're using about 0.81% of that 1% for administration next year. The authority has not seen an increase in the pension and post-employment rates. The programs section is $52 million. We're seeing a decrease of about $2.5 million in there. The expenditures are based on a percentage of allocation, as we saw in the prior slide. For, local subregional street maintenance is increasing about $500,000. That's related to the 3% increase we have budgeted in sales tax. Transportation for livable community projects decreased about $3.1 million. That's due to the timing of the local cities putting these projects together. The planning is $5 million. We're seeing a decrease of about $2.9 million for next fiscal year. The expenditures decreased due to the majority of public outreach on the tax expenditure plan being completed prior to the end of this fiscal year. $1.8 million for CMA and CMP support includes the West Contra Costa high capacity study and PED bike plan studies. Several contracts and other studies are partially funded by grant revenues. Debt service, as we discussed earlier, is going up $5 million. The authority issued bonds in October of 2015. As a result, the timing of the interest payment for last year, we only saw one in March, so this year we'll see two payments on that bond, so therefore we'll see an increase of $5 million. Principal paid this year will be about $15.3 million, and interest is $19.2 million. And it's anticipated we'll use the remaining balance of the $45.5 million that's left in that bond proceeds. With that, we wrap it up and have any questions for you, or we're open for any questions as you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Before the comments and questions, I'll start from the left, go around to the right. Please note that APC had a recommended update on page 4A 14-5 in red. Anyone from the right, questions, comments? Moving around to the left, no comments or questions. Do we have any speaker cards? Public hearing is open. Last call for anyone wishing to come up and regale us with budgetary talks. Seeing none, let me get caught up on my... If we have no cards, let's close the public hearing. And...
Second.
Boy, this is a tough budget. That was a motion from Mitchoff, a second from Romick. Comment, Mr. Tatson.
No, I was just, we did review this in APC, and thanks staff again for the excellent work. This really budget provides us with a great deal of detail about every project and every program, and also provides the public with that same information, which just furthers our desire to be a transparent public agency.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? You got all this, Terry Ann? We're good? Okay, we'd go on to item 4A15, but there isn't any, so let's go to 4A16. This is Interstate 680 high occupancy vehicle completion and express lanes. Authorization to issue a request for proposal number 16-4 for construction management services. Have I given you enough time to get up there, Ivan Ramirez, staff report? Look at that. All right, you're up.
Good evening, Chair Hudson and Commissioners. Susan Miller, Director of Projects, and Ivan.
Good evening, Chair and board members. Ivan Ramirez, Construction Manager.
So we're going to do a joint presentation tonight. I'm just going to do a very quick, brief update on the I-680 southbound HOV completion and express lane conversion project. I'll be referring to some information that you have in a handout in front of you. It didn't really lend itself to a PowerPoint, and you'll see why. If you can take out the big 11 by 17 sheets in your packet, it'll show you on the first 2 pages that you have of the 11 by 17 sheets what the project limits are. Remember, on I-680 southbound only direction from about the Martinez-Benicia Bridge all the way down to El Cerro in Danville. So you can see it occupies 2 sheets for that. The project proposes to complete the HOV lane in the southbound direction through the interchange at State Route 24 in Walnut Creek, and then convert the HOV lane to an express lane. This is accomplished largely by restriping north of State Route 24, but there is some widening, which is mostly to the south, a little bit to the north of State Route 24 in the vicinity of Walnut Creek. So in the handout, when you look at it and you see red areas, primarily down there in Walnut Creek, in that vicinity, that's where we actually have physical widening in those areas. And if you look at the cross-section that's included in that, it'll show you that the physical widening is completely within Caltrans right-of-way. There's also some retaining walls that will be prompted by some of this widening in around Red Gear, and those are in the graphic also. They're depicted by some numbers that we have and called out in those places. We also will be widening the South Main Street undercrossing structure, and the southbound loop there at that structure will be realigned. Due to the retaining wall construction, we will have some impact to some city streets there in Walnut Creek during construction, and we're coordinating closely with Walnut Creek on these matters, and we will require some temporary construction easements, and those might be required from a couple of property owners in the vicinity of Alamo. The other physical features that are included are installation of signs, which are described in Attachment A to the staff report. I'd also like to address a concern that was raised by the City of Concord. The project proposes to restrict access to the express lanes in 2 areas. So if you go to the colored handout that you have, it will show you what we call a buffer, which is basically it's a double stripe line that allows traffic to enter at one point and stay in the express lane. You're not supposed to cross over the double stripe lines and then exit. So the project has 2 buffered areas. And those are from 242 down to North Main, and then from about Red Gear Road to Stone Valley in Alamo. The buffers are there to ensure that the overall system provides a safe and reliable experience to all the users, especially those in the express lane, but also in the general purpose lanes, because it reduces the amount of weaving and friction between the lanes of people trying to come in and out of the buffered area when you have large volumes of on-ramps such as at 242 coming into the system. So Concord's concern was that the Concord residents that utilize State Route 242 who want to use the carpool express lane would have to wait to enter the system until the opening at North Main. So we've met with the city several times and we analyzed their preferred start of the buffer, which was in the vicinity of Monument. We discussed those results with Caltrans. However, this scenario did not operate as well as the preferred scenario. And further, Caltrans had concerns about safety concerns involved with the amount of weaving and friction that would occur between the lanes. Caltrans also noted that traffic coming from Concord has the opportunities at other locations, you can see on the map, to connect to I-680 prior to the buffer. They can come along Willow Pass Road or at Concord Avenue or along State Route 4. So the city has gone on record that they're concerned about any impacts traffic might have on their local arterials trying to access 680. So we agreed that we would be exploring ways to reduce such impacts if those should occur. So we'll be looking at that. The schedule's on the back of the access graphic that you have. So we're working on design, and we anticipate to have 65% in the spring, or coming up here soon, about in the fall of 2016, and have final design in the spring of 2017, at which time we'd get ready to advertise. And then we'd be starting construction, which is about a 2-year process. There's also a testing of the toll system integration system at the end and all the equipment. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ivan to continue on the item.
Yes, Commissioners, so what we're asking, it's an action item tonight. We're asking for authorization to issue a request for proposals from construction management firms to come in and evaluate the 65% plan specification and estimates. And from the insights that we gain from them coming that early, hopefully we'll be able to provide a better bidding package for the contractors. Is that at this time that we normally like to bring the construction management firms. Once the PS&E package is complete, they're going to also provide a biddability, make sure that the contract documents is good enough for the bidders, the contractors, to come in and provide a bid. And in addition to that, they're going to help staff advertise, award, and administer the construction contract. As Director Miller noted, construction is expected to begin in the fall of 2017. And just prior to issuing the advertisement, we're going to come back to the board again to ask for permission to advertise and administer the construction contract. Caltrans has already agreed to allow the authority to do the AAA, the advertisement, award, and administration of the construction contract. So with that, I think that Director Miller did an excellent job describing the project overall and also the schedule, so prepared to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, comments or questions? APC's recommended this. First, Commissioner, Authority Member Pierce, then Mitchoff.
Hi, just for the record, we have had several meetings. David Durand of Transpac and I met several times with the City of Concord and their representative and went over travel time differences and safety issues. And I think I can speak for David and I very clearly. We remain convinced that this is the best configuration and provides the best safety. And when it's time, I'll be happy to move it.
Okay, we got two more, Member Mitchoff and then Arnrich.
Thank you. Not hard to confuse me these days. Okay, south of the 24-680 split, isn't that construction already underway, or is that a different project?
The construction that's underway is the MTC project, which will convert the carpool lanes in both southbound and northbound direction. So MTC has that project under construction through.
But isn't that what? It's just to build it.
They're actually going to be turning that on through Danville and San Ramon. It goes all the way down to the
Danville
county.
south.
Correct.
Okay, so that's why.
There is some overlap. That's probably what you're looking at.
Well, because that goes to my question about the time frame, and it is what it is, but it's basically 2 3/4 years. And is that how long it's taken for MTC to be doing what they've been working on? It's just sometimes you realize you're driving and you don't even realize how long that's been doing that. So I'm just trying to understand. I'm assuming this particular project, at least from the bridge to Walnut Creek, we've got to acquire more. I don't know that we have to acquire more land, but there's more work to be. Explain to me the difference of why the MTC project, in my opinion, hasn't seemed to take as long to build as this would. And if I'm wrong in that assumption, that's fine, because maybe it's been 2 3/4 years already.
Yeah.
Are you asking if it's a slow merger?
Ha, 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 ha.
Our work, as I mentioned, has physical widening, even though it's
Okay.
all within Caltrans right away. But
That's
we
what I was
have
trying to get
these
at. All right.
retaining walls to construct on the outside. We have a bridge widening. We have it's a longer length, although they're doing both directions. So they're basically working in the median there is an overlap. We'll be coming in and installing this buffer into
Okay.
their area. They won't open with a buffer. We'll be putting the buffer through.
So when you say Danville South, now, okay, Stone Valley Road is Alamo. So really, Danville South, that's interesting. All right, well, thank you. Let's learn something new every day.
Thank you, guys. My question was on the 680 south of 24, just because I don't recall us talking about this. Why the buffered section between Rudger and Stone Valley, and can you get on at Rudger? Or does it prevent you from getting on with this?
Right, correct. You'll have to go further down to enter the buffer at Stone Valley.
So what's
basically.
the logic in that? How does that help anything in that particular section? Because there's no transitions. Because on the other section, you're telling one merged highway no, but you're letting everybody spill out before we come to another major merge, which is 24. I see that because you need distance to allow those merges to happen.
Right.
So what is this buying us by
Yes.
preventing people getting in?
Well, I'm sure you're quite familiar with that area where we have what I call the double drop, where you actually start, the 24 comes in, but then you lose 2 lanes. You lose one that merges over, and then you lose at Livorna. So with all that going on, it creates a lot of friction in the vicinity. So if you have the buffer, it allows those that want to just go through coming from 680 further to the north, they can stay out of the way and come straight through. And it just allows more time to be able to have that traffic merge, stay in those lanes. So it's because of that double drop situation that you have going on.
So the reason that I'm asking the question is are we building, so we're widening the road then, essentially creating an auxiliary lane between kind of Rudger and through there, which is to allow that transition to
Where
mitigate
we're
that.
widening is where you do not currently have a carpool lane. So we're actually completing where there's not currently a carpool lane, and we're making, part of why we're widening is because we're making the lane standard, and that allows, again, for that double drop, for people to just have a little bit more room. To the north of 24, largely what we're doing is restriping. So you will have some more narrow lanes. They're not going to be 12-foot lanes in all instances. They'll be reduced. But where we have the room in Caltrans right away to do some physical widening and to complete that carpool system that goes through, that's where we're doing the widening.
Okay. I guess, just from an operational point of view, and this is observation, just having driven through there the past 30 years every day, the backup is caused by we're dropping a lane. We have a exit-only lane going southbound, which goes to Rudger. And the people are in that lane because they're using it like an auxiliary lane. Then you got to push over. But then you pick up the carpool lane, which helps. And so immediately after that, forever, traffic picks up speed. So what it doesn't make sense to me is that whether or not somebody gets on at Rudger or Livorna southbound, what impact does that have on traffic by keeping people in that lane? Plus, they can't get off if they wanted to. So if you inadvertently, were in that lane and you didn't jump out, which, by the way, you don't want to jump out, even on this new configuration between 24 and Rudger. That's a dangerous section. This isn't going to fix that. So aren't you just causing that problem? You're going to cause people, you're going to force people to jump out of that lane, I guess is my point. Because there's no way for them to anticipate getting out of that lane early enough unless you do it in the worst section possible, the heaviest congestion. So it would seem to me it makes sense. Understand why further north you have it. Here, I don't see why we're doing it. I think we're creating an operational problem and we're not solving one.
Yeah, again, what we did to come to the conclusion that we needed buffers at all, first we ran some various scenarios with no restrictions on the access. And what we discovered is we had, and we ran actually 14, maybe 15 scenarios looking at, okay, we have a problem with too much weaving movements going on, and in this area, the double drop. So when we started looking at where we might put the buffers in to restrict access, it really smooths the traffic for everyone, the people in the general purpose lanes. And in this particular area, it was due to that convolution of, you know, the double drop scenario that I described. So if those people that are coming already and they want to get into the carpool lane either to pay or they're carpoolers, they're moving out of the lanes before they get into that traffic that is maneuvering the double drop, and it just smooths all the way through there because we're restricting additional friction for people trying to move in and out. We're kind of making them go a certain pathway, and so it smooths through that area where we have that double drop situation going on.
I like the word smooth.
So-
I don't see the practical application because it's not people getting in. What I'm talking about, it's people trying to get out. There's no other way to get out of that lane unless you do it, again, in the worst congested area where you don't want it to happen. So if I'm headed southbound, I was up in Concord or I'm coming back, and I need to get off at Livorno or Rutgear, I have to make that decision miles ahead, because you can't do it in that. So it just doesn't seem like that's a logical, while you might think about, oh, I'm worried about a lot of people buying their way in, because in Alamo, there aren't people qualified to get in that lane right now. So you don't see any people merging over to get in there in the mornings. So I'm just talking about the exit, and I
Yeah.
don't see that working.
You know, it
Commissioner-
might be,
Sorry.
Commissioner, maybe I can explain this. So the situation now is, and I too drive this because it's southbound only. It's not northbound. So southbound, you can't get off at Rudgear. You drop at South Main or you get off at Livorno. Currently, you can't, the HOV lane starts at Rudgear. So people are merging over to try to get in that lane. The idea is when you build and continue that lane backwards, heading northbound, you don't want to break down that HOV lane. That's where your time saving. So if you need to get off at Livorno, and this is what I suggested because my off-ramp, that's where I get off all the time. So I know that intersection very, very well. And a lot of people stay in that, what they call a trap lane or a drop lane, and then at the last second, they're going to try to merge back in. And my concern was I couldn't get into that HOV lane until after Livorno when I get on. But it makes more sense because now the traffic is going to be moving at a higher speed, and you're going to either get in or you're going to get out earlier. And that's going to allow for weaving to occur upstream rather than right now it occurs like they're trying to jam their way over off onto Livorno. It breaks down the whole freeway.
Yep. Okay, so we'll disagree. So what I see is it's the southbound.
We can run a time
trying
number
to
for you.
exit, and you guys have focused on the entry. I don't think that's our problem. It's exiting out of that. You're forced to exit because you've now trapped them between two areas in our most crushed intersection. The most crushed intersection we have in Contra Costa County is 24,680, and you're forcing people to make that decision way back there if they want to get off at Livorno, which is now 2 miles away. I mean, how would you know that? Logic tells you.
yeah.
Yeah, right. That's good luck with that. I mean, you look at all the models in LA, it says next exit, next. It tells you exactly where to do this. It doesn't say, by the way, wait for 2 miles, skip all these exits. They have it set up at almost every exit. I'm just telling you, I think it's a mistake. And I think we're going to congest our interchange more than we think. And I understand how you've used the model to make sure people can't get in, and that makes sense. I don't know how you can do that without letting people out, but I think the problem is you're trapping people.
Okay, any other comments, questions? I have a motion, Pierce. Do I have a second? Tatson got his hand up first. Before I vote, I would just make one suggestion because you've spent the time on it. If possible, run that scenario one more time.
Yes, I was thinking about suggesting that too, that I could sit down with you and show you all the scenarios we went through and why.
I want to get in my car and go with you.
Yeah. Okay.
That's,
Show you where it's going to happen.
that is now part of the motion. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition or abstentions? Seeing none, we are on to 4A17. Do you need a staff report for this, Terry Ann, or has everybody realized the minute taker wants to take her minutes that way? Motion or comment?
Admin committee discussed this extensively, and we are very happy with what Terry Ann is suggesting and think it will be a vast improvement for us.
There's another motion, Pierce. Do we have a second? Second, Romick. You're not fast enough, Taylor. I'm sorry. All those in favor say aye. Opposition, none. Abstentions, none. We didn't want to bother you, Terry Ann. All right. Now we're on to the important stuff, the planning committee. We have 4B10. This is approved transition of Central and East County 511 Contra Costa. The important thing, Peter Engel's doing a staff report, and I would draw your attention to the finished staff is recommending option 3. Go ahead, Peter.
Good evening, Chair Hudson and Commissioners. This item before you tonight is based on a request from TransPac, who's been looking, or is recently, well, over the last several months, had some staff retirements, and is looking for an opportunity to make a transition from the oversight of the TDM program specific to Central and East County, which they currently are overseeing. They asked us to look at an opportunity where they could maybe transfer that responsibility to the authority. So we took on the challenge and looked at 3 potential options. One was no change, which obviously is something TransPac didn't see as feasible. That CCTA take on the existing employees and bring the program completely in-house, which made things difficult for us from a spacing perspective, potential pension costs and things like that. And the third option, which is somewhat of a hybrid option, CCTA take on the oversight, but that we farm the day-to-day duties out to a contractor. We felt like the contractor that made the most sense is our current agency project management consultant, Stantec. We already have them under agreement, although we would have to do some amendments or revisions to that agreement regarding the scope and the budget. But they could potentially help us transition the program quickly with the fewest impacts to the program itself. Current staff has already started making bookings at schools for next school year. They have some summer programs that are kind of out there ready to go. The Summer Bike Challenge for one, and we feel like using Stantec would be the easiest solution to get those going quickly. Habib Shamskow is in the back with Stantec. If you have any questions for him, I would certainly give an opportunity to Commissioner Pierce and Commissioner Mitchoff from TransPac to make any comments if they'd like to on this. I did want to make it again clear that this only is regarding the Central and East subregions. It's not affecting the offices in San Ramon that cover SWAT or WCTAC that cover WestCat. How the program currently works is we have a budget for the entire program. That budget is split between the offices based on a longstanding formula of jobs and population. And this would only account for the budget that is currently being used in Central and East County.
Sure. TransPac has been working on this for some time and trying to find the most effective way of running our program, and we feel that this really does answer the concerns that we've had over the last couple of years since we lost our executive director and then our director for the TDM program. And this provides us a much smoother way of operating and should make it much more efficient and serve all the needs. So I would move approval.
No, you can't. Mitchoff wanted to do the motion. You'll have to second it. Oh, okay.
You can record it either way.
You can record it either way. Any comments, Mr. Tatson?
So, very happy to support the motion. I would just ask that part of what TransPac does currently, they operate some of the countywide programs, and that involves meeting with the other RTPC TDM managers, and so I would assume that Stantec will step into that role and conduct those meetings and attend the meetings where the other regions are reporting on the countywide programs that they administer.
Our understanding is that Stantec will take over all of what TransPac folks did, and that any of the extra programs that we want to consolidate, maybe it's time that we all as a whole county look at which ones make more sense operated on a countywide basis. But for now, it's just existing TransPac functions.
Keep going. Your light's still on. I see the light burning.
I guess I'm trying to understand, because if I look at the staff report, it says, currently the TransPac staff provide the carpool and transit incentive programs for the entire county. So I assume Stantec will continue to do that in cooperation with the other regions, and vice versa for the programs that the other regions operate. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for staff recommendation, and you wanted to say something, Peter?
Oh, I was just going to add that there's a small paragraph in here, and it kind of addresses part of what you're saying, or at least maybe what you're looking down the road. The three offices have been talking the last few months, and we get together every month and have a meeting, and so there's coordination about doing a strategic plan this year for the TDM program that will kind of look at these countywide programs and which countywide programs still make sense. Are they truly being effective? Is there other programs out there? So we are going to take a close look at the countywide programs and see what we think is the most sense on how those continue to operate.
Okay. Go ahead.
Just a brief comment. I know I mentioned this at APC, and I don't really have a dog in this fight, as they say. But I just want to make sure, because I've heard from some people in that program, just to make sure, I hope that the employees that are in that group are being taken care of and that they're well notified about what's going on, because I've heard the opposite. So, and I'm just repeating it again, but I just hope it's, regardless of whether the program works the way your entities want it, I just still hope that we take that, because some of those people there.
We've been assured by the contractor that they're reaching out and offering positions.
And we got a nod from Habib, so it's cool. Good. Okay, you got a motion for staff recommendation. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, no abstentions. We're on to 5-1. Somebody named Iwasaki got another distinguished award. All right. Do we have to tell us about it? Who's doing it? Come on up.
Good afternoon, Chair Hudson and Commissioners of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority. My name is Alex Pine. I'm not on? No, I'm on. It's on. Okay, good. Should I start again? All right. So my name is Alex Pine. I'm the Director of the Institute of Transportation Studies at UC Berkeley, where I'm also a professor in the Electrical Engineering and Computer Science Department and the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department. My colleague Tom West is the Director of the California PATH program, and today we're honored and grateful to have an opportunity to have a few minutes to honor our colleague Randy Iwasaki here, the Executive Director of CCTA today. So by now, I think most of you know that Randy has been extremely respected and known member in the ITS community, the Intelligent Transportations community. He has been a crusader of technology through the various positions that he has held in different organizations here in California. What some of you might not know is that he's been also an extremely strong supporter of UC Berkeley, in particular through the Institute of Transportation Studies. ITS, Institute of Transportation Studies, is an institute at Berkeley which has been here for nearly 70 years, which was established by an act of legislature in 1947 with three main missions, which are research, education, and technology transfer. And Randy has provided enormous support throughout the years to the institute. So I could go on and on about all the things that Randy did for the Institute. I'll just maybe pick one example. So at ITS, we have several research centers, one of them being the California PATH, for which Tom serves as the director, another one being the Transportation Research Sustainability Center, and Randy has been very supportive to both of them. To give you one example, back in 2007, when USDOT was starting the Safe Trip 21 program, that everybody thought would go to the state of Michigan, Randy helped us get that grant in California, that created jobs in California, that put Berkeley, Caltrans, and many other agencies at the forefront of technology. And this is one of the many things that Randy has done to support education, to support research at Berkeley. So today, the reason why we're here is we want to honor the contribution of Randy to ITS, to UC Berkeley, and the award, which will be presented to Randy in a minute, I'm going to read, is a distinguished award for advancement of research and innovation. The citation I'm going to read is for exceptional leadership and vision in the field of intelligent transportation systems and sustained support of the Institute of Transportation Studies and the University of California, Berkeley. One thing I can say before you
Wait. Before you do any more, would you turn around with that plaque and show it like this? 'Cause all of a sudden we got photo op in here.
We'll do the photo op in a minute, but I'll show the plaque now.
Good. She's got it.
The one thing I want to say, this is the first year this award is being presented, and when the committee met to proceed with the award, it was so obvious that you would get it. Your name popped up within the first 10 seconds of the meeting. Of course, there's a full, thorough review process which confirmed it. But I mean, I think it's really telling that after all these years of service and great work together with the university, I'm personally extremely honored to give it to you. And also because you are the one who gave me my very first large-scale grant when I was an assistant professor. You had a lot of faith in new faces at the table. So not only as the director of the institute, but also personally, I'm really honored to be able to give you this award today. So now I think if you want to come here, we'll present you officially with the award. And we have definitely a few photo ops. So I think maybe we'll...
Thank you very much. Just, the wall is getting filled up, Randy. Okay, next item we have, not looking to see if any lights, is item 5.2. It's a nice article by Ben Miller about the driverless vehicles. One of these times, see if you can train the car to just keep going, get him running. Anyway, 5.3 is a letter from John Muir Land Trust, if you wish to read that. The associated committee reports, you see TransPac, Transplant, I don't have a handout today. We were canceled at SWAT. West County, I don't have anything for. Chair comments, I would just add that I was told today that AB 1592 cleared Senate Transportation yesterday with a unanimous vote. If anybody was going to report on that, if not, AB 1592, Benil went through with a unanimous vote. Commissioner comments, reports, starting from the right. Come on, Bob. Don't just sit there like a buoy bobbing up and down. You got something you want to say? Okay, seeing none.
Not tonight.
Yeah, Janet, did you want to say something? I'm sorry. Okay. Any other comments?
Just want to reiterate, we mentioned at APC that not only does Randy get recognized, but this agency got recognized as the best transportation agency in the state of California this year. And there it is. And I happen to be honored I got to accept the award. And then we had a wonderful, he couldn't make it. We had a wonderful luncheon. It was great to see all the other projects and things were going along. I tell you what, I suspect we're going to get some more of these before time is over. So anyway, congratulations to all our staff, too.
Thank you. Yep. Now, first we got to get to the all-important, we are up to the executive staff comments.
Well, let me first start by saying that you don't generally get these awards unless you have a great team. And so Tom West and I have worked, as well as Alex, for many, many years. Tom worked and I worked at Caltrans together, probably not quite as long as Ross and I, but pretty much close. Ross and Tom worked together on a lot of the proposition work and the ERA dollars, and so I think that's ultimately what drove Tom out of Caltrans. He's an electrical engineer, and all these numbers they had to crunch over and over, and late at night he ended up going to work for PATH. But thank you very much for this honor. And I wanted to give you an update on Ross and Hisham's work. They're going to all the cities. We're going to go to all the cities. Next week we're going to go to more cities. But currently we have had great success. 8 cities. They have reported back that unanimous votes: Orinda, Martinez, Concord, Danville, Moraga, Lafayette, Antioch, and Hercules. These guys are driving late at night, going out to these meetings and getting those votes. Next week, it's Pittsburgh, Pleasant Hill, Walnut Creek, El Cerrito, and San Pablo. And then the 29th, Oakley, Brentwood, San Ramon, and July 5th, Richmond, Pinole, and Clayton. The other piece of news about the hearing at the Senate Transportation and Housing Committee yesterday is that AB 1665 was passed on the consent calendar, and that went through 10 or 11-0. No comments whatsoever. We did meet with the Assistant Deputy Secretary or Undersecretary Michael Martinez to go over the reasons why AB 1665 is an urgency bill and needs to be signed before July 20th meeting. So Mala informs me at 5:59 p.m. before 6 p.m. we have to get that bill signed. So we're starting to do all the things we need to do to make sure that everything's in place when the polling numbers come in and show that there's going to be great support for our potential measure. We're going to be ready for that. And so we're doing a lot of work in Sacramento. I like to say that I get hives when I walk into hearing room 4203, where we had a lot of the Bay Bridge hearings. But we went in and we came out unscathed, so that's pretty good news. And Don was there just in case if they pulled 1665 off consent. As far as the executive director's report, there's been a lot of speeches, a lot of notoriety. We had media day. We had about 700 media articles, I think $4 or $5 million worth of media exposure for the authority. I think that it was well accepted all around the world. We're doing a lot of interviews and a lot of speeches. I think on page 2, Mayor's Conference got a lot of good response from the mayors. They actually want to take a ride in the Easy Mile shuttle when it shows up. We presented Jack Hall, Ross, and Lindsay are doing presentations, as well as Peter. We're meeting with a lot of startup companies. One of the highlights is Mitsubishi Motors came in and they wanted to talk about testing their autonomous vehicle in the future. And the reason why I mention that is the founder of Mitsubishi Motors, this guy's last name was Iwasaki. So it's a family crest. So I like to say when I was in Japan and Tokyo, I actually went to the mansion, the Iwasaki mansion, and showed them my passport and said, that's my grandfather. And they were, backpedaling, going, oh, it's Iwasaki here, wow. And it's not my uncle or anything like that. But I'd sure like it to be if that were the case. Lindsay did present WTS in Austin, Texas. We met with Google Ways. They want to look at another carpool option, so we're trying to find ways of moving people out of that single occupant vehicle. If it's not in an autonomous vehicle, maybe we can find technology that will help incentivize carpools and things like that. And it's interesting that the more notoriety we get, it seems like the more meeting requests we get from these startups. And so I think it works great both ways. Jack Hall traveled to Portland, Oregon. Community Transportation Association of America, they read an article. They wanted to have us there. He's actually spoke yesterday at another event because they read another article about our City 5.0 concept, and they're really interested in that. I mentioned Demonstration Day. League of Cities, California Cities, made a presentation there to their executive committee. They were interested in the autonomous vehicle. And lastly, Ross made a presentation at East Bay Leadership Council. Today I made a presentation to ACEC about the potential measure and the progress we're making. We're going to cut a ribbon one of these days on State Route 4, July. It's now moved into July into the recess of the legislature, so hopefully we can find that date. And we're getting ready to advertise Central and the southbound HOV lanes, and there's another project, Balfour, that we're very, very close. So I did mention, and I'll say it again, we have a saying, promises made, promises kept. And so I laid out all the promises that we made when we got here, and we're delivering on those commitments. We're having savings. We did a $500 million highway corridor with $10 million of programmatic contingency, and I believe we probably still have $6 million left. So normally you don't go into a corridor like that with that little amount of money, but kudos to Susan Ross and Ivan and others for making sure that we delivered those projects on time. So we're going to do a lot of marketing through Lindsay and tell our story. And so that really is, in a nutshell, the executive director's report. And I don't think I have anything else to say.
I have two things. One, you started off with Intel. Is there any follow-up on that? I mean,
Intel's interested because every autonomous technology that's out there has a chip in it. And they want to sell more chips. So they're coming in and asking how can they partner, and I'm not really sure yet because we haven't got a tier 1 or a tier 2 supplier, but once we get those, then we'll try to set up a partnership with Intel.
The other thing, and when I first saw it, I thought you were just kidding me. This Cal Poly Dean's Advisory Council, and what, you talk to these people, or do you just say one of the successful startup programs?
Yeah, so I'm on the Dean's Advisory Council. The School of Engineering, the dean has actually kept me on board after they got the last one left. They put a new dean, Deb Larson, came on board. She kept me on this committee, and they have an entrepreneur innovation program at Cal Poly where the students actually get to go to class and partner with others to try to develop startup concepts. So in this case, I think it was iFixit. This guy makes $20 million a year. He's building the largest Wikipedia for how to repair things. So your iPhone glass breaks. You go to this iFixit.com, and he will tell you exactly how to replace that glass. But the problem is you don't have a screwdriver that can take those screws off because they're too small. You can't go to Osh and buy it. This guy will sell you a kit, and you can take it all and have a big suction cup, and he'll show you exactly how to. And his whole notion is this. A lot of resources went into building this phone, and we're a society that generally just when it breaks, we throw it away. But you could actually fix it. And so he's trying to give you the opportunity to learn how to fix these things. He makes $20 million a year selling tools. That's enough for me. $20 million.
I only ask because not this guy, but my son-in-law works for that company, and I've watched them just grow like. I mean, they sent him over to China. They're going gangbusters.
Exactly.
Anyway, that I thought you just put it in there. Joke. Anyway,
I didn't know you really related to you.
You take a look at the calendar for June, July, and no August, and the calendar of upcoming events. If anybody wants to comment, if not, we are adjourned to July 20th. I'm looking around to see if there's any lights. If I do, 2016. Thanks for coming.